Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
Nice.
Members, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of chambers and in the gallery to please stand for the day's prayer. We ask Assemblymember Hernandez to lead us in the prayer.
Members, Father, give us the strength to recognize that we are weak, the ability to recognize our faults, the humility that public servants must possess. Give us the wisdom to serve the good people of this state in accordance with thy will. Amen.
Please remain standing as Mr. Ng leads us in the pledge. Mr. Ng. You may be seated. Reading of the day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Friday, June 3rd, 2011. Assembly meditating. Honorable Pheno Moss, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, Presiding Chief Clerk E. Dodson.
Mr. Allen moves. Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions. There are none. Introduction and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the Governor. There are none. Messages from the Senate. There are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences of the day will be deemed read and printed in the day's journal. Mr. Allen, you are recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Bonilla, Brownlee, and Mendoza to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow Assembly members Huber, Jones, and Olson to have a guest at their desk and a photographer on the floor.
Without objection.
I further request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Furutani, Garrick, Ma, and Swanson to speak on an adjourned in memory today.
Without objection.
I request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A, the file notice requirement, to allow the Budget Committee to meet on Wednesday, June 8th and Thursday, June 9th upon call of the Chair in a room to be announced.
Without objection. Mr. Allen? Does that complete your motions? Members will recess the regular session for the purpose of convening the first extraordinary session. Without objection, we will substitute the prayer, pledge, and other opening procedures in the regular session for those items in the first extraordinary session. Motions and resolutions. Mr. Allen.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bills 4 through 23 are at the desk. I request unanimous consent to take up SB 4 through 23 without reference to file for the purposes of second reading today.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For your permission, we'd like to vote on Senate Bill number 4 and substitute the roll 4 through 23. We recommend the Republican members either abstain or vote a no.
Very good. Members, we will vote on item 4, and then we will proceed to substitute the roll for subsequent items 5 to 23. Mr. Allen asks for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman asks for a no vote. Post the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 This motion requires 41 votes, members. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Allen moves the call. The sergeants will call in the absent members. Members who came forward and sought passes, if you would please come forward and speak to me quickly, please. Members, while we're waiting for the rest of our colleagues to arrive in chambers, we will proceed with adjournments in memory. Ms. Ma, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great sadness that I rise to adjourn in memory of Alexander Xander Urban, who passed away on May 25th after he was struck by a car crossing a street in San Francisco just days after he graduated from the University of San Francisco. He was 22 years old. Xander spent last summer in the Capitol as a USF McCarthy Center for Public Service and the Common Good Fellow. As a McCarthy Fellow, Xander served in the Governor's Office of Economic Development, where he primarily focused on international trade and assisted with the planning of Governor Schwarzenegger's trade mission last fall. His contribution to the governor's office was so great that he was even invited to join the governor on the California delegation, but he declined because he wanted to finish his degree. Xander hoped to devote his life to reduce conflict in the world and was extremely passionate about public service. Everyone that had the pleasure to work with him recognized his infinite potential. He was also a talented musician and avid skateboarder. He is survived by his sister Mariana and his parents Will and Laura Urban. I respectfully ask we adjourn in his memory and recognize the loss we all share due to his untimely passing.
Thank you, Ms. Ma. Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to adjourn in memory of the former state treasurer, Matt Fong. Mr. Fong was born in Alameda County on November 20th, 1953, and was raised in Oakland by his adopted parents, March and Chester Fong. Mr. Fong graduated from the United States Air Force Academy in 1975 after serving on active duty until 1980 and retired to the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserve. His love for flying continued after leaving the academy. Mr. Fong was a licensed flight instructor and also a licensed flight glider pilot. He earned a master's degree in business administration at Pepperdine University, where he served on the Board of Regents until his death. He also attained a law degree from Southwestern Law College. In 1991, he was appointed by then-Governor Pete Wilson to the Board of Equalization, and then followed in 1994, he was elected to the California State Treasurer position, becoming the first Asian American Republican to hold the statewide office. I'm sure everybody well knows that Matt was a part of the iconic political family in the state of California. His mother, March Fong Yu, a Democrat, was elected to the state assembly and then served as the California Secretary of State from 1975 to 1994. Unfortunately, we have lost Mr. Fong as he passed away, and he served, though, with an interest in issues like pensions and was a financial consultant and investor. President George W. Bush, appointed Matt to the board of a federal agency that helps administer pensions to more than 1.3 million private sector employees and retirees. It's with great sadness that we share that we have lost this very special individual and a great contributor to the state of California. Others here knew him much more personally than I did, but as the chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, I wanted to make sure we acknowledge his excellent contributions to the state of California. Thank you.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to rise for a moment here and recall and praise my friend Matt Fong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Matt Fong, only 57 years old. We lost him last week on Wednesday. A true American success story with his family. Adopted, as stated, rose through the education process, getting both a master's in business after college at the Air Force Academy, serving his nation. Rose to also gain the respect of many in the public service field that he offered as both on the Board of Equalization and our Secretary of State. His love for our state was unequaled by anyone that I'd ever met, and his love of his family. He's survived by his son, Matthew Jr., and his daughter, Paula, and his mother and his wife, Paul. I ask that we adjourn in memory of Matthew Kipling Fong.
Thank you, Mr. Garrick. Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. I join my colleagues in offering our condolences to the family and celebrating the life of Matt Fong, who was a graduate of Skyline High School in Oakland, California. After the Air Force Academy, he received his master's from Pepperdine University, my daughter's alma mater. And he was an attorney, and he was married for 33 years, and a celebrated family man. He lost his battle with skin cancer last Wednesday, and he survived by a wonderful, loving, and caring family, and we wish them well. And his memory, we salute his accomplishments and the honor that he bestowed upon all of us with his service to this great state.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise briefly to endorse and add to the comments of my colleagues on Matt Fong. Matt Phong was a singular icon in the Asian American community. For me, even though he was on the other side of the aisle, he represented a break with the Asian American cultural experience that led to parents advising their children never to run for office because it meant you gave up your family life, you gave up your privacy, and your life was open to all, which is very un-Asian-like in its desired characteristic for a lifestyle. Matt Phong changed all that. When he ran, he encouraged many of his generation in the Asian American community to consider running for office, and at the same time, he had an incredible relationship with his family. My enduring memory of him was on a New Year's Eve when he got his children and himself and his wife to go up there and sing before we rung in the new year. And I will miss him personally. He was a neighbor to Judy and myself just south of Pasadena, and I respectfully request that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. Ng. Members, please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the day's journal for our regular session. Back under first extraordinary session, we have Senate Bill 4 on call. We will lift the call on SB 4. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Yep. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 21. Measure carries. Without objection, we will substitute the roll for Senate Bill 4 and list that as the roll for Senate Bills 5 through 23 without objection. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and Senate Bill 22.
Ayes 41, noes 21. Measures carry. The first extraordinary session is recessed under call of Speaker. We are back in regular session. Ms. Brownlee, under motions and resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to direct everyone's attention to the back of the chambers where my guest today is Nancy Yarborough, who is president of the California Scholarship Federation. 2011 marks the 90th anniversary of the California Scholarship Federation, the oldest honor society in California. Since 1921, CSF has made a positive impact in the lives of over 1 million California students. Each year, CSF honors thousands of students on their academic achievements and their dedication to their community and school. CSF also awards 50 high school seniors with scholarships. Members, let's all applaud the California Scholarship Federation on its 90th anniversary and extend our best wishes for its continued success in the years to come.
Welcome. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce my 16-year-old son, Christopher Jones.
Mr. Mendoza. Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Speaker and members. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my daughter, Sophie.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I would like to take a moment here today to recognize the California Strawberry Commission for its dedication to their farm employees through the California Strawberry Scholarship Program. This program is dedicated to providing scholarships to the children of strawberry farm employees for their pursuit of a college education. To date, the California Strawberry Scholarship Program has contributed to the successful completion of educational degrees, including bachelor's, master's, and PhD programs. This year alone, 168 students will receive approximately $175,000. In the 17 years that the California Strawberry Scholarship Program has been awarding these educational scholarships, it has helped nearly 1,200 students by awarding more than $1.3 million to further their education. Today, we recognize the California Strawberry Commission for its dedication, and we also recognize some of this year's scholarship recipients and recommend and commend them for their pursuit of a college education. And please help me welcome them at the rear of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. For our guests and visitors, we have an unusual number of guests today, but that's also given the fact that last week we moved over 278 pieces of legislation and were not able to receive guests as a general rule. Ms. Bonilla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I invite you to welcome at the rear of the chamber two students from Lafayette, California. It's my privilege to introduce Blake Margroff and Matthew Fedderson from the Acalanes High School. Ms. Skinner, Assemblywoman Skinner, this is within her district, and it's my pleasure to present on her behalf and also representing Contra Costa County. We're here to honor these two young students because they have represented our county so well in a competition with students from across the nation and from over 40 countries. Blake and Matthew, both seniors, received top honors at the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. They received the Gordon E. Moore Award. This year they've been taking an accelerated biotechnology class where they developed their experiment called Simulated Treatment of Cancer with Photoelectric Effect-Produced Secondary Radiation, which could potentially develop a more effective and less expensive cancer treatment by placing tin metal near a tumor before radiation therapy. Thank you, Blake and Matthew, for the opportunity to join with you in celebration of this truly exceptional accomplishment, and best of luck in your future endeavors.
This concludes business on the daily file. Announcements. Session scheduled Tuesday, June 7th. Check-in session and floor session upon call of the Speaker. Wednesday, June 8th. Check-in session and floor session upon call of the Speaker. Thursday, June 9th. Floor session 9 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen moves. Mr. Hagman seconds the motion to adjourn. The House stands adjourned until Thursday, June 9th, or upon call of the Speaker. The quorum call is lifted.